And we're going to welcome Jamie Saponaro, okay? She is a literacy coach, and she is going to be sharing with us some valuable information on the district literacy goal and literacy in general, and how we can make sure we're meeting our goal. So thank you, Jamie, for being with us today. All right. And of course, Lori Young is here too.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi, Lori. I like the applause before you start. It's good. My name is Jamie Saponaro. I am instructional strategies consultant. I do lots of literacy coaching. I do lots of technology integration. So there was always a little twist with technology with everything I do. I taught many subjects. I taught mostly at the middle school level, math, science, geography, taught a lot. And now with Common Core, which I always felt this pressure to incorporate reading and writing skills into everything I taught. And now Common Core tells us that we have to. And there's actually a special little section for you all in Common Core. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. If I can find it. It's a little jumpy. Here it is, Common Core. I have a link here. By the way, this website, I'll have your principal email it to you. It has all different resources. I know you guys have done close reading before. We're going to revisit it a little bit. I have lots of new resources for you, I hope. And look at some things that we can kind of water down to make it a little easier for you to use that whole concept. But this, in fact, this is Common Core, which is all redone. I just noticed this about 30 seconds ago. It's all, yeah, it looks really fancy now.
It's all the same though.
It's all the same stuff.
It's all the same, but it's just a little fancier.
Just a little fancier, a little more colorful. But this is where it says grades 6 through 12 literacy in history, social studies, science, and technical subjects. And what that means is everyone else. So that's everyone. So that way you can cover for everyone. And this is your little section here. So you guys are 9 to 10 and 11 to 12. So that's for us, and basically what it says is that we all, including, every subject has to make sure that we are covering skills in literacy as well. Because students are, and this is the reason behind it, sort of the philosophy, in record numbers now, students are leaving high school at remedial levels, whether they're going to college or they're going to other types of apprenticeships or whatever they're doing, they're at remedial levels. So we need to help them, help themselves with these books. And sometimes the books, and you were saying that you love your book, right? But it takes a lot of skill and time for you as teachers to pick out your books, because a lot of the textbooks tend to be written at high school level books, tend to be written at college level, and it's very difficult. So this way, you guys, it seems like most of you, I saw some of the other schools, you guys spend a lot of time in picking out text, that's appropriate for your students. Close reading is really dedicated for complex text. Now, passages. So maybe not every single passage in your text requires a close read, but many of them do. So we do need to spend more time with that. And a lot of times what we do with survival skills is we either read to them, because we say as teachers, oh, they don't get it, so we have to read it to them. Or we'll say, well, I'm just going to kind of skip the book because I can do it better. And usually that's right. But what happens is we end up doing a disservice to them, because they actually need to muddle through this and work through it and struggle through it and problem solve through it, because that's what life is. I don't go to the doctor without reading something first. I don't go to get my car fixed unless I look up all the symptoms that my car is having. So we need to learn to read. A lot of what we read is from either text or magazines or from the internet. But regardless of what it is, there are different tips and tricks that we need to give to our students so that they can take with them as they move along. And that's the idea, is college and career readiness. So that's what we need to do. But you also have your huge curriculum that you have to get through. So we need to find some type of process that you can use so that you feel you're doing it on a regular basis. So that you feel that you are not just hitting this just once a month, which I think is what our goal is right now, but maybe for next year, you can look to do this on a regular basis. 5 minutes is part of your do now, 10 minutes, something every day, something at least once a week on Fridays. But the best is if you can do it on a daily basis. And I'll show you some different ways that you can structure. You have a 2-hour block, is that what you have? Some different ways that we can try to sneak it in so that it becomes part of your daily routine. And that way you can feel good knowing that you're sending them off with all the skills they need. to help them, because they're not just going to be getting it in their language arts class. They need it not just in their language arts class. We read everywhere. So that's sort of the why, and let's talk about some of the how. So I got a little jumpy here. So basically what close reading is, I understand that you had I call it drive-by training, and with lots of other things thrown in. So we're going to go through it a little bit, and then I want to water some things down to make it easy for you to take away. So close reading, notice the colors that I use. This is an important annotation skill that we'll talk about in a little bit. But basically what it is looking at a text and trying to figure out what it says, how it says it, how the author has crafted it, put it together, and what it means, what it actually means. So what can we take away from this? So that's really what it is. And when we look at Common Core, that's how it's actually, every part of Common Core is broken down in key ideas and details. That's what it says, right? Craft and structure, that's how it says it, how the author's putting it together for you. And then integration of knowledge and ideas. So what it all means. How can we take what we already know, what we're learning, synthesize and put it together to take along? So that's what this is. Now, when we are incorporating our text, when you're doing what you do, your authentic approach to what you teach, that's what you do, is what vocation is actually putting what they're learning into practice. We need to also consider how it all comes into play. So, and how we're actually presenting it, what we're actually doing to teach the students. So when we look at, this is average student retention rates over 24 hours. So when we just lecture, you can see that's nothing, right? Pretty much nothing. We're going to walk away with not much at all. When you integrate some reading in there, they're going to bring about 10% of that away. When you add in your audio visual, which is an easy thing to do now, I think most of you have the projectors, so we try to incorporate that. Maybe a little video, maybe a little graphic, something like this. That's still only about 20%, and that's the most common. I use that a lot. But then when you add in a demonstration, which you probably do on a daily basis, we've got 30%. But look what happens when we add in discussion, and then also practice by doing, which is what you guys do probably on a daily basis, and then also teaching others. What we're adding are these layers, and it's not to say one or the other, more than other, but actually using all of these at different times. You're really getting students, teaching is the highest form of learning, we know that as teachers, so giving them every opportunity to do that as well as these others. And the most important to me, and why I'm talking about this now in close reading, is this, because close reading is not just reading. Close reading is not just reading it once, it's reading it several times, and it's pairing it with text-dependent questions, and we'll talk about the different types of questions and what text-dependent questions are. But it's also mixed in with discourse, with conversation, with discussion, with articulation. And that is what we need to include on a daily basis to pair up with our reading and pair up with the questioning, mold them all together, and that's where we're going to have students actually making these new concepts their own, making them their own, and that's what we want to do. All right, so there's a lot, again, you're going to have this website, there's some other stuff here, so basically, we want students to basically want them to get it, we want them to own it, and we want them to be able then to use it, and that's why we do this. Now, if you'll notice here, all of this text, I actually use some annotation. I don't know if you can see a pattern. I put some text in bold, I put some text with underlining, I put some text in italicized words. So, I don't know if you can see a little pattern, but this is one thing that you can have the students do as part of a close read. Whether you, and I think you probably have professional magazines that go along with your content area. You can photocopy, because you can't write unless they have an interactive text, which I doubt they have, which they do exist. Those are really great. Kids can actually annotate right in the text. But I don't think you guys have them, but you do have the magazines. So you can photocopy some of those and actually have students use. We're going to talk about color, we're going to talk about different ways that they can take notes along the sides, giving them purpose. But this is, you can see that I underlined all of the verb phrases I bolded some of the noun phrases. It helps to stand out for students what the main idea is. So again, this can be done, this sort of thing can be done when they are using a copied article of some sort, something from the internet, something from any of your magazines. So basically, when we look at some of these questions, we can see these are different things, different types of questions you can ask, and we'll look in more detail. What questions is the author trying to answer? What are the author's basic concepts? What are the author's important inferences or conclusions? So these are some examples of some different types of close reading, text-dependent questions that you can ask. So what are the different levels of text-dependent questions? If we look here, and I'll try to enlarge this because it's a little blue. There we go. Control plus. Okay. So when we look at these, and sometimes reading a text will take more than one day. And so some of these different types of questions can take that span of first read questions, second read questions, third read questions, and that's how we do it. So basically, first read questions are going to come from general understanding and key ideas, just simple parts. Then we're moving into vocabulary and text structure and author's purpose. These are different, these are like for a second read, and I have a little graph organizer for you that you can use too. These are second read type questions, whether it's in the same day or the next day or homework. These are second read when you're looking at the craft. And then when we look at the inferences and opinions and arguments, that's when we're looking at third read type of question. So we don't jump into asking students these to infer until, with something that's very complex anyway, until we give them a first read. Maybe you read to them, maybe you read with them. They they discuss questions with each other. Pairing all this in to build to get up to those types of questions there. All right, so how does that look? There are lots of links here that you can use. Let's take a look at, these are the close read steps poster. Going to open on its own?
Yeah, it's thinking.
It's thinking, okay, there we go. Now, this is, again, there are lots of people say you have to do it in these steps. Lots of people say you don't have to do it in these steps. It really depends on you. It depends on what they're reading. It depends on your students. So, but this gives you an idea of all the different components of, and the steps involved in a close read. So here, the first read is independent, and that's typically how you want it to go. The kids are going to problem solve through it, they'll have some struggle through it, but they're going to experience it independently and silently as they read. And you give them the opportunity to annotate, and we'll talk about different ways that they can do that. Then you want them to answer those general key idea questions that we just looked at. And you want them to quick write and discuss. You want students to actually be discussing. So they answer the questions and then they discuss it with a partner. Then the second read is usually when the teacher models and the student listens. Or you can have the students do that second read independently based on the questions they read. And then they have more questions. They think, they write, they talk. Very important is the talking. Third read is when, again, either the teacher reads or the students read, and there's some annotating going on now. And the fourth read, there can be a fourth read, there doesn't have to be a fourth read. Students reread to find answers and evidence, very important. But then the most important part is the eighth step, because the close read is not really what it's all about. What it's all about is actually putting what they're taking, what they're learning into practice, something bigger, something larger. So we want them to either be doing some type of hands-on project with what they've learned, or some type of writing, something beyond just the read. And that's the idea. This is just the means to a bigger end. All right, so that's what you want to remember. There's always something at the end that they're going to be using this for. And that's what you want to consider. Let's take a look. We're going to look at two, if they open up, let's see. Two videos. One is a quick little one that I like, and I have a poster to go along with it. Come on. There we go. Nope, back up for some reason, hold on, bear with me. Oh my.
The computer's really slow.
Yeah, it's a little, I think I'm pushing it too hard.
Yeah.
All right, let me stop it, let me refresh it. Be patient. It's not all there. Let me close it out. Oh, by the way, while this is trying to open up, you can see one, the idea here, circle powerful words and phrases. Underline words or phrases you do not understand. Write important thoughts in the margin. Very important to give them purpose. And that's an easy thing for you to be able to incorporate. You can even have them do that every time that they read a complex text. You can have this poster up in your room. But little things, annotation is probably the easiest way for you to incorporate the close read concept. I don't know where it all went, so hold on. Hold on. Here.
Does this happen all the time here?
That computer's not hanging
Yeah,
yourself.
that computer's quite slow.
They got 10, 6.
It is.
I think we need all new computers in school.
Our life story is a bandwidth. There's a little man in that closet going to wheel.
Might be in there too. We're in a budget, we got squirrels.
Jumping, this is let me give it one more time, chance. And I can just below here. Come on. But that's not it. It's not here. Oh, look, it's not when I hover, it shows. Is it 10th grade? All right, let's do the 10th grade. We'll go at the time. This is one. Okay, this is one. I want to show you another one.
Today we're going to do a nonfiction. The purpose of close reading is to look
Just going to show a little bit of it. This is
at a
one.
difficult text to figure out the underlying meaning, and also to tease out some of the things that
So
aren't
basically, just listen to some of the tips that she's giving them as they read.
A 17 magazine article. No, it needs to be hard, okay? This is the kind of stuff you're going to see in college. So the text I actually gave you is from my sophomore year in college. So I have a special connection to it. But we're close reading things that you read in college, and this is how I want you to read in college. You're going to make notes to help you remember, to help you ask questions, and to help you get the overall meaning from a text that has multiple layers to it. Because remember, we read this 2 or 3 times in one sitting, okay? So what we do when we first close read is I want you guys to annotate. So our first annotations are going to be related to the essential question, which is worse, failing or never trying. So this is a little bit different than last time because I'm giving you something to think about at the very, very outset. So just to remind you, when we annotate, I want you guys underlining your main ideas in pen or pencil. And remember, this is a hard text, so will you know what the main idea is during your first read? Maybe not. But I want you to take a risk. I want you to underline it, even if you think it's the main idea, just practice. There's no
in charge of some of the prisoners and force my thoughts to turn to another subject. So while he's in line with the other men, he's forcing himself to think of other things so that it won't be a problem as it is. So because I saw myself turning the countdown, so he's like daydreaming that he was teaching
So he's really only gone to 2 different places. He's saying it's very cold there, and bitter winds. And then it says that
Could help me teamwork in a camp instead of undertaking this horribly long season.
Yeah. He's only getting a couple rations of food a day, says that first paragraph.
It's showing like the struggles of him, like what he has to go through.
Okay. All right. So, what are some different things that you had the students use in order to work through that text for their first read? What did she have them do?
Highlight.
She had them highlight using different colors for different purposes, which is important. What else?
Map out how they determine if they were having a problem, if they were understanding it, it was all mapped out.
That metacognition, thinking about their thinking. Yeah, very important. And then giving them the opportunity to talk about that as well. What else? Did she said symbols as well. Oh yeah, circling.
And quotation marks?
Quotation marks, the exclamation marks. So specific things that she had them do in order for them to think about what those key points were in the text. So basically having them pull it apart and analyzing it and then putting it back together for discussion purposes. And understanding it much better. So you, in terms of the text that you have, if there are very intricate steps that the students are supposed to be reading about, that's the perfect scenario for them to be doing this close read. And we'll talk about the different types of questions in just a minute. There's another quick strategy. Let me see if I can get back. Let me see if I can go here. Thinking notes. Yeah. I don't know what's it's hidden.
It's working though.
Yeah, it is. Okay. This one's quick. I like this one a little slow. Here it comes. Yeah. Thinking notes. This is a nice, easy one.
I find really helpful in dealing with close reading tasks is called metacognitive markers, or as a more kid-friendly term, thinking notes. So your homework was to read through and use the thinking notes. So we didn't just want highlighted text, we wanted some of those particular thinking notes for your reactions to it. So let's start with the last one there, just something that was confusing. Did anybody put down a double question mark?
The third page in the third paragraph, Z-E-I-T. Yes.
Zeitgeist,
Yes.
right? Anybody here familiar with the term zeitgeist? What you might see in a typical text that doesn't use this is highlighting. And students might underline or they might highlight, and really if they're not tracking their own response to the text, what they're doing is just sort of saying over and over again, this is important. So what we try to do is say, why did you pick those particular elements and what was your reaction to them?
I thought that was a good way to end his entire letter, and it was very well put and ended well.
For a student, it makes a great, helpful
That's an
way
author's
of
craft
remembering
question.
over a period of time how they reacted to a text.
I was wondering with these outsiders coming in, what was that referring to? Because it was around quotation marks, so I thought it was referring to something.
The way he put it was really interesting. He was talking about like laws that you break because of like they're not moral laws.
With this, instead of just saying, I highlighted it, I'm not sure why, I can quickly say, okay, who's got something that they thought raised an interesting question? And we can move to some really specific conversation prompts.
So that's easy, and that's a simple process for students to use. Let me get out of here. Escape. And move away from there. But that is, again, an easy one. What I did was, on our page here, well, here, I made a little poster in case you want to print this and you can put this in your classroom. It could be, again, sort of your go-to thing that you use on a regular basis. Something easy for them to do so that they're thinking about their reading. And then they're using it, again, this is just the starting point for further questions that they can do for further discussion, with their partners, with their teammates. So this is a quick, easy one. So again, this is a quick poster that you can use. All right, so I have that link down here at the bottom. All All right, so let's take a look at some of the different types of questions that we'll be pairing with these multiple reads and with the discussions the students will be having. Which one do I want to show you? I have lots of different resources here. Here's a little planning sheet that I'll show you. And what it does is it takes a look at the different types of questions that you would be asking of students. So for the first read, the first type of question would be, what's going on and how do I know? So what type of, you can ask a specific question based on the passage that you've chosen, the complex text that you've chosen, that deals with that sort of question. The second read question is about the author's craft, the writing craft. So how do the author's choices in language and craft help me understand or appreciate something that I didn't notice the first time I read? Then you can develop a question that is specific, that's dealing with the author's craft. The third type of question is something about, this example is, what does this text cause me to think or wonder about some larger aspect of the text and the human condition? So again, beyond what is there, but using what is there, and we'll talk about the differences there. And then, again, like I said, this is the means to a bigger end. How will these questions be integrated into a larger sequence of activities involving reading, writing, and talk? All right? So, when we're talking about the first read questions and the third read questions, we have to be careful. Because sometimes when we create questions that are, let me go back here to this graphic, this one here. When we create general understanding questions, key detailed questions, we don't want them to be, we want them to be text dependent, meaning we want students to use the text. But we don't want them to be what's called right there questions. Right there questions are the type of questions where they can sort of just like fill in the blank, where they can just go right into the book, find the quick word answer, and write it down. That's not the type of text-dependent question that we match up with close reading. We need something that has them use the text with a little bit more involvement. Same thing with vocabulary and author's purpose. Then when we get up to inferences, well, obviously if they're making inferences, the answers to the questions are not right there. They have to use their schema or their background knowledge to help answer that question. But we don't want the question to be so lofty on Bloom's taxonomy, that we'll look at now too, so that they're actually leaving the text completely. Like, what would you do in that scenario? Well, okay, they can talk about what they would do, but they're not actually using the text. You see what the difference is there? So when we look at Bloom's taxonomy, and you guys have probably seen this wheel before. This is the new revised version.
Yeah, they got a copy of this in there. You guys have a copy of this in your book that we gave you at the beginning of the year.
Okay, good. So basically what we're saying about the questions, where'd it go? Is,
I'm so sorry.
no, it's all right. Oh, please. I've had lots of interesting. I had to do a workshop in my heels on a chair because the smart board was too high for me. All right, so here what we have is, all the levels of Bloom. So remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. These are the verbiage, the question cues you would use to create questions on those levels, and then these are the products or activities you have the kids do. But when you create text-dependent questions, you don't want them to be so low that they just have to quick find an answer and not actually use the text, muddle through it. And you don't want them to get too lofty or high to where they're not using it all. So you want them to be somewhere in between, and that's sort of where the trick is. So as an example, there is a strategy called QAR. I'll take you here. The question-answer relationships. And this is a graph organizer that you could use. It's a really great, QAR strategy is a really great comprehension strategy for reading. However, it's not pertinent to, not all of them are, pertinent to a close read strategy that you're having the students do. And let's look at why. So look at these, read through them, and look at which ones would be considered text-dependent and which ones would not. So which ones would be text dependent, where the students are actually using the text to help answer, and then which ones aren't? So how about we'll do a little think, pair, share. So you guys are thinking, looking, and then just pair with someone next to you and talk about what you think. And then we'll talk about that.
I'm not reading the page. I haven't read things. Like an hour and a half since I read it's just by the title It's not stated in text though. The third one's not stated in text.
Yes, but
I'll take a second.
the answer will be more sensitive.
No, you got more.
I'm wishy-washy, right?
Okay, let's talk about these. All right, so we have in the text questions, so that's kind of a tip right there, but we're going to analyze both of those, and we have in my head questions. So when we look at the right there question, what is that a text-dependent question? Now again, there's sort of different types. Remember we said that this is sort of low on Bloom's taxonomy. This is something that's just quick one-word answer, so it's not a really good type of question to use with a close read because we're talking about complex text, and we're talking about wanting students to actually problem solve through the text to try to find the answer. So while it is a question that has them use the text, it's not necessarily text dependent where they're using their problem solving skills. So that's one we kind of want to stay away from. We want to elevate it a little bit more. So let's look at the search and locate. This is a perfect example, right? I heard some people saying that, of a text dependent question. The answer is located in more than one sentence or paragraph. You can see here this is just on the line, several lines, between the lines, and beyond the lines, and we'll talk about those. The reader must put together different parts of the text, and the information is stated in the text, and the reader answers the question by putting it all together. Some synthesizing going on, which we'll look at too. And then author and me. Now that is sort of, remember we looked at the second read type of question, where we're looking at author's craft. That's what we're looking at here. The answer is implied, is not stated in the text. Here actually, you can see in this example, they have to be using prior knowledge, they have to make inferencing. They can be using inferencing, but in a close read type of question, they really, their answer is they have to use the text. So as long as they have to use the text to answer it, so it may not be stated there, but they have to use it to try to answer the question, then it would be considered text dependent. And then beyond the lines, this is something like I talked about that's too lofty on Bloom's taxonomy that would not be considered text dependent because they're actually leaving the text. So while this isn't a great strategy that you could all use, you wouldn't use it with your close read. You would use it as a comprehension strategy. It's a great thing to use, and it also prompts discussion as well. So for close read, no, but for comprehension, yes, you could do it. So you could do it for something that's not as complex. Remember, the close read is for complex, something, a real passage that's super meaty and difficult. All right, so that's an example there. So here are some question starters to help you through actually using the QAR strategy, but we can pick some of these out so you can see right there questions. So those are simple questions that you might do just as a quick review from, as part of a do now, something quick, something, but even better do now would be something like we just now, think, pair, share. You can have them ask a question silently, answer a question silently and independently, and then pair and share to discuss. These are the think and search starters, author and me, and on my own. So over here, the two on each end, you probably want to stay clear of, but these are some ways that you can create questions that would help you to create text-dependent questions using think and search and author and me type questions. So that's
Amy, I just say something here? That, would you put that?
I'll put that back up, yeah.
there? This is really, by the end of May, in May, when you do your final question, this is really where you should strive to be. Asking some type of a question that is in those, probably more likely that second column, based on what we've done so far. because I'm really struggling with the author and me right now because of the type of books that we have, because they're technical, so I'm kind of pushing that author and me out of my mind. But when I do look at that, I see design, under what circumstances would you use synthetic oil? I mean, I could see some type of these questions being asked. So when we're looking at your final sample in May, we're hoping that your questions have progressed from, you know, who did this and when did it happen, to something that's either in column 2 or 3. So does that make sense to everybody? And you have to sort of like guide the kids, you know, maybe you're going to do one together, so you can kind of like guide them along the way. Because, I mean, I know this is new to a lot of folks, and nobody is expecting perfection, but it's just, you just want to try. You want to try it and do it, and try to do it on a consistent basis, because you're only going to get better and better, and it's just going to help the kids with, it's actually going to help you too, because if you assign the kids a reading assignment, you know, and they have a question they have to answer, they have to read it to get the answer, and most of the kids want to get the answer, so.
And what's nice is in the other school, I think there's pretty much just one teacher per content area, but here you have a team, right? You have other teachers?
In some areas we do have a team, yes.
Which is helpful, I think,
Yes.
for you guys to actually sort of, maybe in Bill time or
Elaborate,
something,
yes,
you can do some of these ideas
Or
together.
share ideas too,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, and that might be a good thing to bring to your next faculty meeting too, just to like break up and actually work on these together and share your ideas that you've done together. I can't remember what this one is. I added this. Oh, okay, yeah. So what I did was I took an article and I kind of broke it down. So I took this, that gives us again sort of, you know, the progression of how we create these questions. First read question is literal level, promotes general understanding. But again, you know, something a little bit higher level than just simple. Although this is pretty simple. Who's the main character? What information in text lets you know that this is the main idea? And that is the perfect type of question that is not just, this is a little too right there for me, but this one really is a perfect example of, you know, still general understanding, but they're actually using, they have to use the text to figure this out. And not just find something that's, you know, popping out right at them. Second read type questions is fostering deeper understanding, attention to vocabulary, which is going to be very pertinent to what you do. You've got a lot of vocabulary in your text. Text structure and author's purpose. And again, you know, same thing with author's purpose, maybe a little more difficult with your texts because sometimes they're kind of written, you know, kind of bland. But when you look at articles in the magazines that you order, this is a perfect way for you to utilize those. Sometimes you might feel like you don't have time to use those and you want to. Well, you know, it's depending on what you're teaching, the perfect way to do it. How does the story change from the beginning to the end? That you can reword that for what you need. How do the words influence the book's meaning? And then third read types of questions. Have the students answer the questions requiring inferencing and the formation of opinions and arguments. This is huge and very important to Common Core as well. Using textual evidence for support. What would logically happen next? What clues support your thinking? Do you agree or disagree with the author? Provide evidence for your answers. And these are perfect types of questions for what you teach as well. So this, I sort of broke this down for you here. The other thing I wanted to show you is, I wanted to have time, I don't think we're going to step on the computer. By the time we get onto the website, it'll be over. But like I said, this will be emailed to you. So make sure you spend some time in here with the graphic organizers for reading. Some of them will be great for close reading, and some of them will just be really good for comprehension. But it'll be, regardless, great for your literacy initiative. Let me just show you what it looks like. It's going to open. It looks kind of like it's trying to take a nap right now. Yeah, let me see. Hello? Oh, there we go. Oh no, maybe it was just that link. This one went. This is, let me see. Yeah, this one isn't, maybe, oh, it's me, it's my fault. That's me. So, but again, it's forcing them to use, that's a great way to force them to use these text-dependent questions and there's text evidence is citing page numbers, making that's an important habit that they should be getting into to back up their reasoning. or back up, again, so they can reference, in this case here. These are some good graph organizers that are nice for you to use. This is extremely important right here for what you are teaching, because, again, you have to remember that none of us were taught how to read. We were taught words, but we were not actually taught the process of reading. And I often will read, it'll be pretty orange font, and I skip right over the title. And kids do that also, and then we want to make sure that that's the most important thing, that they read that first. Most important thing for them to read the graphs and the charts, and how to read them, and the captions that go underneath. So we want to, make sure that they are focusing in on that, and this is a resource to help them do that.
I think that's actually a really great thing to do right there, because just looking at Pete's book when we came in, where Pete's book had so many graphs and so many charts and so many pictures, if you were to select a specific picture and say, what is the importance of that, it's all right there for you. So I think that's a good idea.
It is, and this is something you can just, again, there might be something here that you guys all decide you want to try together at the same time and then talk about it. So you can kind of pick one, print it out, everyone gets a copy, and everyone try it, because they're pertinent to what everyone does, and then you can discuss it. And so I definitely recommend doing something like that where you do it all together. Because sometimes you kind of feel, because you may not have a reading background, and you might feel like, I'm not sure if this is going to work. The best teachers are risk takers. You got to just try it. You got to just jump in and try it. It may not work the first time. You may realize you want to just change things around, mix it up a little bit. That's reflection. It's what we do. It's how we teach. So that's the best thing to
or even just ask questions from, like you say, the sidebars and the headings, and just ask questions from that area.
Now this gives some annotation ideas. A couple other resources I just want to highlight, and you guys can pick. So here again, this is a question mark, like we saw the thinking notes. The question marks for things you don't understand, the asterisk for important ideas, and then the explanations for connections, or she recommended for something that was interesting or exciting. I'm not going to open this up because it might take too much time, but these are some really good writing and active reading graphic organizers. Great quick resources for you to use, so I want to make sure you see that there. This one I made, I revamped it from something else because I thought it would be great for what you guys do. Again, something very simple for you to use, but so great for the students. Basically, synthesizing is taking what they read, taking what they already know, and putting it together, funneling it into something else that they're now kind of in new understanding. So basically, use information from the text. The text tells me, you might want to include, page numbers in here on the left, and then tell what you can conclude from that, and then putting that together into a new understanding, into a new idea. So again, this is another really easy resource for you to use that is taking an aspect of close reading, but something simple for you to use in your class. So you may not be developing the text-dependent questions here, but it's a way for them to use the text itself in synthesizing. It's part of the process. So that's one that you can use. And I showed you the thinking notes poster, so I think that's something good if you just put that in your room. Again, giving them purpose for the annotation. Two other things I want to show you before we have to close out is, this is an article, all those cookie teachers who have time to blog. This is, I like to steal ideas from them. Where is it? Let's see. 5 close reading strategies to support the Common Core. Okay. You basically say the same thing. If you were back in college, what did you do? I highlighted the whole thing. It looked really pretty, but there was no purpose. So here, it gives lots of, there it is, right? We all have those, right? We all have those. Like, what did I do? I just made a mess, and it just looks the same, but with color.
I can't sell that book after that.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, that's true. So numbering the paragraphs is a really easy way to annotate the text, is numbering them. Again, this is going to be either from an article that you have or something interactive. Chunking the text, which they can actually pull out. Breaking it up into smaller sections is a really great way for them to better understand. Underlining and circling with a purpose. And we saw that one poster, which actually I'll pull out on our main page because I like that. Circle powerful words or important phrases. Again, to some type of, and it might be something that you come up with because it's really relevant to your text and what you're teaching. So you can make up your own annotation strategy, but something to get them in the habit, and that's what you want to do. So circling and underlining with purpose. Oh, and then choosing your left margin or right margin for different things. And they can just use like the notes, take notes this way. And in the left, like they might have main idea in the middle of their page. On the left of their page in their notebook, they can talk about what the author's trying to say, or you can make up something different. And then on the right, dig deeper into the text. Use powerful verbs to describe what's going on, represent the information with a picture. That is a great thing to have students do. In fact, some of my tests were just having kids draw what their vocabulary was, instead of defining and memorizing and matching and true and false. Because what happens with fill in the blank, true, false, multiple choice, what happens with that is that it's from the perspective of the teacher who created it or the publishing company who made it. It's from their perspective. And it's not actually figuring out if the kids understand something in a different way. So actually, instead of having them, like for orographic effect, instead of having them define it, they can actually draw a mountain with on one side having rain come down with lush green, on the other side could be rocky. That is a much better way to show that they understood, comprehended something, rather than having them repeat it, spit it back out to you and memorize for them to later forget. This really shows that they understand it. So drawing is a perfect way. Just have a test with drawing. That's a perfect way to assess. But have them actually, when they're reading, draw what they're now comprehending and understanding. So that's a great thing to do on one side. And it's a close reading strategy. So these, if you read this article, this is a nice article. It gives some good ideas for doing that as well. And the last thing I want to talk about is another tool that you can use along with your close reading to tie in that reading, questioning, and discussion. And this is called reciprocal teaching. Reciprocal teaching is a cooperative learning comprehension strategy that incorporates, I call them the big four comprehension strategies. It has students summarize, it has them, if it opens up, it has them summarize, it has them question, it has them predict, which might be a little difficult in some of what you do, but not necessarily. Do this and do this, what do you predict is going to happen? And then making connections. So there are 3 different types of connections, by the way. There's the text to self connection, where they can make a connection to something in their own lives. There is a text to text connection, where they make a connection from what they're reading to another text, or a movie that they saw, or a YouTube, that works too. Or a text to world connection, where they're making a connection to something that's going on in the world. So, and then there's evaluating purpose is the last thing. So basically what they do is, as they read silently and independently, the students are going to do, because this is what all good readers do. These are all the strategies that all good readers do. So they have to do all of these. They do them all independently, and they bullet. They don't have to write complete sentences. They don't break their fluency. But they're going to write down, bullet what they summarize. They're going to bullet any questions. I don't understand this word, or I don't understand why this has to go first and this goes next, whatever it may be. I predict this, and then I connect whatever type of connection they're going to do. So they do this independently, and then they come to their team of 4. And we had then everyone, so now this is the reciprocal part. Now they're teaching each other. So there's going to be a summarizing, everyone has done all of these strategies, but there's going to be a summarizing leader, questioning leader, predicting leader, and connecting leader. So now the summarizing leader is going to say, I summarize, blah, blah, blah. And then the next person, you kind of do round table, team member 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. Team member 2 is going to say, I summarize this. And they continue doing it. And when they start doing this strategy, this comprehension strategy, they sort of just kind of like read it and then look to the next person to go. But once they get doing this, say once or twice a week, you make this part of your routine, they really start, I've seen actual arguments break out. Kids picking up the book and saying, but look, on this page, this happens. So they're actually, to support themselves, they're using the text dependency, to prove their point. So that's what you want them to do, and that's the ultimate goal. So once they get in, you are now removing yourself from the front, and you are now kind of facilitating this sort of activity here, and you're kind of listening in, and when you see them kind of, boring discussions, you kind of prompt them with different types of questions. When you see that they're starting to fight, about a prediction or whatever it may be, you calm them down. But you as the facilitator now are helping to guide them through this in using these comprehension strategies and using discourse and using the text to support what they're trying to say. So again, this is another really simple thing that you can do that's using all of the different things that we said are so important for comprehension and true retention and understanding. If I can get back, circle back. There we go, whoops. To our learning pyramid. And that's the idea. We're sort of incorporating it all. Hello? There we go. There we go. So we're sort of incorporating it all in that type of activity. And that's what you want to try to do. You want to layer different things that you do to allow students to not just utilize what you're giving them, but then also utilizing the text to help understand it much better. So hopefully some of these resources will be useful to you. I tried to give you things to help you create your own questions and also give you things to support in the elevation of those types of questions as well. That might be easy to use. All right, so we'll have this email, this web address sent to you. I often update it, so you might see some changes to it. In fact, I'm going to add that one poster that we saw. I forgot I like that one too. And my email address is on here, so if you have any questions, email me anytime. If you need something specific, let me know. I can find it and give it to you. All right. That's it. Any questions?
I think we're overwhelmed right now.
Yeah, it's a lot, but I tried to make it easy so that way it's your webpage that you can go to and use. Try to pick something new every week, pick something different, but also really try to get yourself in a routine that you can either do as part of your do now, the last 15 minutes of your class, 10 minutes of your class, 5 minutes of your class, maybe one day a week. Try to get yourselves in a routine where you're using some type of strategy for a close read to help students and getting them beyond these remedial levels where we're finding them. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.